Can we start? We are left with 3 members. We are left with 3 members to ask questions on JICS. And they have assured me that they are not going to spend more than 10 minutes each. And I have also been assured by members that for SAPS, they're not going to spend more than 15 minutes each. Agreed? Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, at the moment I have no concession on you. Honorable Ngola, over to you, 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Allow me, Chair, to say I share the same shock and disbelief as Judge Cameron. We know when we were in Mangaung Correctional Center, I was the first one, Minister, to taste a cake that was baked by offenders. It was a very nice cake, and not at any given point that I would actually believe that people who bake such kind of a cake can do such things. So I say I share the same shock and disbelief with you. But I must say, Judge Cameron, I share the same disbelief and shock. Can do such things. But I must say, Judge Cameron, that with all this kind of saga and pity, I still strongly believe that JICS missed a golden opportunity. JICS missed the golden opportunity because this, in actual fact, would have been stemming from a foundation of information that was collected by JICS even before the time where the incident occurred. Because if you check the trail of information that we're receiving in this committee.
Honorable Ngola, we are told that there's no sound.
There's no sound for the outside feed, Chair.
For the outside feed. Committee Secretary, can you attend to it? Can we test? Can you speak?
Yes, Chair. Can you hear me that side?
They say you can speak. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, I was finishing saying this would have cemented a very great legacy for JICS. Because I'm telling you, we may now be speaking about Mangaung Correctional Center, whilst in a number of correctional centers, the same modus operandi is actually taking place. Nevertheless, let me leave it like that. In the report, the incident happens on the third day of May in the morning. Then 4th, 5th, and 19th, and the 25th of May, there is a movement JICS is making. But from the 25th of May until the 7th day of August, JICS is silent. So what has been happening from the 25th of May until the 7th of August? What were you doing as JICS boss? In terms of the report, there is nothing that reflects as the work that you were trying to do in assisting the situation. This is an aftermath after the incident occurred.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngola. We were taking statements. We were investigating through our ICCVs on the ground. Our Bloemfontein investigator was collating statements. She was coordinating with the police. I can't give you a detailed timeline, but if the committee requires it, I can find out from her exactly what she did amidst all the other investigations. So we were active. We weren't inert. It seems like a big gap, but again, I would humbly submit that that is because of the wisdom of hindsight.
Okay. I get that you don't have a final report. But there is investigations that you undertook since the day of the incident. An inmate writes a letter to a judge saying he is of the knowledge that a man called Snowy is helping Bester for him to escape. This happens before the actual escape. Now, my colleague is asking the year that, who is Snowy? But my question will be different by saying, in your own investigation as JICS, have you been able to uncover what kind of assistance did Snowy render to help Thabo Bester escape prison?
Thank you, sir. May I say that I'm not aware of any letter preceding the incident written to me or to any of my colleagues in which it is alleged that Snowy is helping Thabo Bester to escape. And then secondly, I'm again running the risk that Ms. Ramoleng alerted me to and cautioned me against. I do want to say that we are overwhelmed with work. I'd want this committee to know this. We were asked about segregations. I got the figure over the lunchtime. It's not what you asked me, sir, but I want to take this time. Last year, we have 3 people working on segregations and on all mandatories. We've got 3 people, Mr. Muhlaba, Mr. Rapule, Professor Muhlaba. We got 4,921 segregation reports. So when the committee says to us, what does this tell us about Thabo Bester, that we received 3 segregation reports, 2 out of 3 over a long period, that's the context. It doesn't excuse us from being more alert, as your question rightly implies. We should have done better. None of us in this country are doing enough. And I concede that in front of this committee. But we didn't investigate the question of which warders helped him, because we know that there must have been. We knew this from the start, but we haven't got to the bottom of that yet. We hope this committee will help us get to the bottom.
Okay. On the 26th of October, you write a letter to Minister Lamola and say, "Dear Mr. Minister, there is something highly untoward about the Bester arrangement." And from where I'm seated, you started with the issue from the 3rd of May. But on the 26th of October, there is no detail you are providing to the executive of the department that out of the work we've done, the preliminary reports point out that there is this, boss. From where I'm seated, when you say there is something untoward, that is not providing information. You are saying there is something we don't understand that is fishy or something. So was that the content and the substance of the letter that you returned to the minister?
Indeed, sir.
So when you say there was something untoward, highly untoward, what from you as the authors of the letter were you expecting as a response from the executive of the department? When you don't give detail, you don't say this is what we have found on the ground with respect of this matter. So this is a particular intervention that we require from the ministry and all the relative matters. So what exactly were you expecting as a feedback from the letter? What the intention of you writing the letter, what were you expecting as a feedback from?
You're making a good point, sir. I didn't do any of those things, and it's a fair point. I didn't say, Minister, please, I want you to call in the National Commissioner, call in the Regional Commissioner, call in G4S, carpet them all, get to the bottom of this. I didn't do any of those things, and your criticism is fair.
Okay. Let's go to the 6th of February, 2023, where you send a message to the National Commissioner of Correctional Services. And the National Commissioner responds and say, the contract management is dealing with the matter and all that and all that. When JICS received that feedback from the National Commissioner, did you regard the feedback as a non-cooperation and a non-assistance from DCS to provide you with the necessary information for you to conduct the investigation?
I'm too sober and too old, sir, to simplify the complexity of institutional conduct and responses. So I've never told the National Commission or the Minister how to do their work. I lobby them both, I pressure them both when I can, but I've never judged either of them, and I don't propose to do so now. It's for the committee to judge if they want to, but if your implication is that it's inappropriate to judge the Minister on my SMS the evening before we left for Bloemfontein, I'm happy to concede that.
Okay. That's fine. I think that's fair from where we are seated. Then on the 7th of February, 2023, you request a meeting with the Free State SAPS and G4S Mangaung management. And from the report, you make it unequivocal that SAPS Free State has made a commitment of the work they've done and of the work they will do. Then the report ends there. And you must know that in this meeting is JICS, SAPS, and G4S. But there is nothing that says G4S committed to do ABCD from that meeting. But it says SAPS committed to do this, and you were happy as JICS when they reported progress and the commitments they have made. But what did G4S commit to do? Or they were just there as spectators or something? This part is silent about the commitment of G4S to this thing. And most particularly at the time where there is a dark cloud hanging over them that they may have, I'm using a correct thing, they may have assisted an inmate to escape. Now, in your report, there is nothing that speaks about their contribution in a meeting that was called for you to bring a resolve in the calamity.
We met with the Bloemfontein SAPS top brass at the suggestion of General Lebeya of the Hawks. We met with G4S on our own initiative after the fairly outcomeless meeting with Mr. Renzo Smith the previous week. And they knew, that dark cloud that you described, sir, they knew that it was hanging over them. We were there to warn them, to light a fire under them, to say this thing is going to hit you and your company and your contract management like an avalanche. So the action we wanted from the SAPS, we left them the leeway for. They knew what we wanted. We wanted the rearrest of the convicted murderer and rapist. We wanted the arrest of his accomplices, including Dr. Magudumana and those people who assisted her to retrieve the corpse, and those people who drew up her perjurious affidavit. So with G4S, they knew perfectly well, and they must have been briefed by Mr. Renzo Smith from the previous week, what we wanted from them. So if we left that out of the report, I apologize, but it was abundantly obvious that we were lighting a fire under them.
Honorable
Okay.
Mola, are you using the time that we have agreed on, or are you using the old time?
No, the new times, Chair, but it's the last issue now.
Okay.
The last issue, there is a 2015 judgment where inmates took the Department of Justice to court, the Department of Correctional Services to court. The issue was really around them wanting to use their personal laptops inside the prison cells. But it specifically spoke about for study purposes. Now, it turns out that in the Mangaung Correctional Center, the day in the morning of the incident, discovered there was a laptop and a cellular phone. Now, it actually is uncovered here in this inquiry that actually Bester last became a student in 2021 January. So from 2021 January to May the 3rd, no one knows about this thing. Did JICS have any sort of information regarding all this thing?
Not at all, sir, nor would I have expected us to have that information. But may I say that that question of laptop access for registered students is before the Supreme Court of Appeal now, and JICS has joined as an amicus, which means doesn't take sides, but it provides information. And we have got an affidavit there from me or from one of my colleagues, which sets out all that information. But again, I'm taking us on a rumbling side road.
That's fine. You may have to investigate the said to have been cancelled visit on the 14th of February. You must investigate that, and you must equally investigate if the notorious doctor did not spend some of the nights there in Mangaung. It's highly possible. By the look of things, it looks like it was a free-for-all for them. They entered when they like and they got out when they like. So you must investigate those things and help Parliament to uncover such truths on behalf of the people of South Africa. Thank you.
It was not a question, Judge.
Mr. Chair, when I drew attention to the 14th of February, supposedly cancelled being Valentine's Day, your Deputy Chair, Mr. Kubudile Janti, was laughing very much.
Well, because the problem, Chair, is that that's one scenario. The other scenario is that Thabo Bester might not have been in prison.
Members, before we proceed, it has been brought to my attention that we must try and be very sensitive to some of the information. I think during the process of our engagement, we made mention to the fact that one prisoner was moved from one prison to the other for safety purposes. Let's try and be conscious of those things that can put one's life in jeopardy. Honorable Nivot Truchen.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not going to be long. I'm going to get straight to the point. Honorable Judge, yesterday G4S brought up the issue of the smell of petrol. And I see nowhere in the JICS report, I see no mention of petrol. And I'm asking this because there were 3 investigations, but I'm not getting any sense of how the fire was started. And so now I would like to know from JICS investigators, from the witnesses or whoever you were in contact with, were you informed about the smell of petrol at any point in time? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. The smell of petrol specifically as a fuel has arisen, to my knowledge, only recently. The post-mortem report and I believe our report itself do speak of a propellant, but we don't identify it as petrol.
Apologies, I have 2 more questions. I have a second question. Yesterday, I asked about the single rooms, the single cells, the single rooms. I thought it was 17. It was corrected yesterday as 70 single cells. In JICS's investigation, did you ask if all of the 70 cells were occupied at the time of the fire or not? And for the reason why I'm asking is that Mr. Bester was put specifically in a cell that is close to the exit. So did JICS itself know that in the 70 cells, were they all occupied at that time, the time of the fire?
Thank you, ma'am. It's a very good question. My impression when I've been there twice to Broadway is that all the cells are occupied. I might be wrong on this occasion because your implication that there was a vacancy elsewhere is a potent implication. We didn't follow that up, but because of the contract terms, it's important for G4S to keep every cell occupied for their financial interest. But you're quite right, we didn't ascertain that.
And then my last question in relation to the JICS bill, the bill that JICS wants to bring forward. I have taken note that you said that JICS has a limited role, and that is well understood. You have no power, JICS has no power to investigate escapes. So I am curious to see the bill. Chairperson has warned all of us that any new bill must come before June this year. So you have 1 more full month, May, to bring this bill before us. Otherwise, this term of Parliament will not be able to pass it. So I'd like to know how far the bill is and when will it be able to come before us in June 2023?
Thank you, ma'am. That is an honourable Ramolobeng diversion again, if I may say. Ma'am, we at cabinet memo stage, and it's a complex, spiky issue between us and the department whether the bill, the minister on my right has supported the coupling of the CSA amendments and the enactment of the JICS bill. It may not prove possible, but we're going to do our best, particularly because of the Ramolobeng diversion that you've raised. We're going to do our best to do it, but we still have to finalize the cabinet memo, and we're waiting for the money to be fixed up from Minister Godongwana before we can do that. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Chair. I'm done.
Thank you very much. I think it's good that both the judge and the minister are here. The Concord decision says Parliament must comply with the Concord deadline, not the executive. So as the committee, I think time has come that we must seriously discuss whether the timeline set forth by both JICS and the executive would make us to be in a position to meet the deadline. And if no, then we should start with the processes of having a committee bill. but I think when we come back, we will have to engage on that issue, because the deadline, I think, is November or December, which includes both the NA and the NCOP. So we really do not have time. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a long day, Judge, so I will not be long. I just wanted to ask you a few things about at what stage was the public officially advised about a serial rapist and a murderer, besides all the media, the excellent media coverage that was being given. But at what stage, and my understanding was it was only sometime in March, but help me to appreciate that. And you have made a number of concessions today. We understand the pressure of your work. We understand everything. But I just want to get that firstly, and obviously we'll raise those issues with the department, with SAPS as well. But I wanted to get your indication from your response.
You're absolutely right, sir. It was lamentably late. I think you're right. It was in the last week of March. I might be wrong about that. But for the first time, there was official announcement, not ground up, warning the public, as it nobly did, but an official announcement that an escaped rapist, murderer, and as your honourable colleague Breitenbach has said, a serial rapist is out on the loose.
So a number of people might ask, why is this committee sitting? Why have we got ministers here? Why have we got this high profile? You as a judge here, given that this is an escape, it's highly publicized, but to me, that is one of the reasons, is the fact that we as Parliament need to get to the bottom of why was this not advised earlier to prevent, as Mr. Gianti said, systemic issues like this happening again. And I want to just ask you, you really put it very well that this issue is not only about one escape, as dramatic as it is, but it goes to the heart of our criminal justice system as well. And I fully agree with you that this highlights deficiencies. I also want to ask you, though, because a lot of focus has been on the one prison, the deficiencies there, but we're all aware, I've been on this committee for 24 years. The Jolly Commission has highlighted issues of corruption, recommendations. Professor Munich in 2016 brought out recommendations again of corruption being involving, and as much as correctional services and others are trying to address it, we know it is still widespread. So the issue to me is this is not something new, and it could have been foreseen in as much as I highlighted the video yesterday from 2018, which again goes to the heart of this unique case and possibly other cases where people are running businesses from prison besides gangsterism. But here you have a person running a business making millions of rand, which then makes it easier to bribe officials. Would you agree with that?
Definitely, sir. And the committee knows that I've also pressured the committee on statutory reform. It's a difficult time, it's a difficult issue, but over-incarceration is also, I sit here with people whose colleagues I see every day. We cannot blame the department for a problem that we, judges and parliamentarians, created, which is the desperate 30% overcrowding.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going on a sidetrack, sir. I'm just saying that it's a chronic problem and it's a systemic problem, and we need systemic solutions. There's no prison system in the world that is corruption-free, but you can make it corruption-less. Yes. And we must embark on that path.
And I think there'll be a lot of lessons learned from this whole exercise, such as having a top-of-the-range prison, but if your systems are not working, the human element comes in, of course.
Agreed,
what I wanted to just touch on now is the role of whistleblowers that you have highlighted, in as much as I think you mentioned, is it 3 persons that you've relocated, or just the number is 2? Now, I want to say I'm deeply concerned about the one inmate that is still there that has given evidence, and I think you really need to look into that, because that evidence, as a lawyer myself, there's so much that the inmates there that were at that cell or surrounding cells would be able to tell you, and you've done interviews with them. For example, if on the version of the facility, it was Mr. Bester who set himself alight, you would have had screaming, you would have had something. No sound. Straightforward. All your inmates were said, but we heard nothing. Here you've got, so you're doing that process, and that will be ongoing, but there are so many. I highlighted the issues of the length of the bodies yesterday, and I understand with fires it can change, and that I'm not laboring that point. But when I get to whistleblowers now, I'm deeply concerned about comments that have been made about whistleblowers and about the journalists. And I'm going to put these questions to SAPS and the DCS, because I noticed that you've taken a particular care, and we know, broadly speaking, and I don't want to speak about legislative reform, but we know what happened to the Gauteng Chief Director of Finances. She was assassinated. So our whistleblowers are not being protected. And I would urge in these cases, where you are busy investigating this particular case, if there's any suspicion, rather err on the side of caution and get those inmates into protective place or wherever. We don't want to mention names, but the one that you mentioned is deeply concerning to me, deeply concerning. And it's on record, it was the person that cleaned the cell. And I think that needs to be looked in. But when you have suggestions that were made on the 17th of March, by a statement from the department, those that exposed the scandal, and the department is complaining about so-called leaks from unidentified sources. And I presume that's the leak that you sent to the ground up. That it could have been that article that spoke about the report. And it's referred to in the ground up article, leak. So they're referring to you. They wouldn't have known it, but they're referring to you. But suggested that information supplied by these unauthorized sources was putting undue pressure on the department to confirm or deny these reports. That's just disgraceful. Because had it not been for those reports, we wouldn't be sitting here today. You did everything in your power to get things moving. Nothing was happening. It was only as a result of media and outrage from the public that there was pressure on the institutions to start performing. Would you agree with that?
Thank you, sir. I certainly agree with your last proposition about the pressure, but may I say by that stage, Ground Up was in receipt of a huge number of flaky reports, and the Ground Up staff and editor had a huge task to differentiate between reliable stuff and leak stories, sort of speculative, imaginative stories. So I don't know who the department was referring to there, but I don't think it was referring to the core reporting of Ground Up. There were other media, Times Live and IOL, that carried reports that to me seemed to be speculative and far-fetched. Ground Up didn't ever do that. So I didn't see myself as implicated. The cap didn't fit.
SAPS also says that 26th of March, the National Commissioner says they investigate Investor's prison escape, and we appreciate it's a sensitive investigation. We as MPs need to be sensitive to the questions we're asking them. We don't want to prejudice any criminal investigations. But here, the Commissioner complains about the leaking of sensitive and confidential information to media houses. Obviously, I would agree with him if it affects the criminal investigation, but warned that this has been looked into by the authorities. Now, to me, that has a slight chilling effect on investigative journalism. Would you not agree?
I do agree, sir.
And is it not a question, why should there not have been, why should the department and police, why aren't they investigating, not going after Ground Up and investigate whistleblowers, but going after the corrupt officials?
Honorable
Indeed,
Swart.
sir.
So, Chair, I'm winding up. Is that my 10 minutes? And it's
Yes.
Anyway,
I left with 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So we'll wind up. I think the point that I just wanted to make is again is to commend investigative journalists, but to say we need to do more to protect them and whistleblowers. And let me just finalize this one point, and that is that the investigative journalists took great pains to go through the information, and in fact asked, the one journalist, Steyn, emailed Brigadier Makele asking if there was a police official to whom Ground-Up could refer sources about Bester's whereabouts and about other information. The response was that Crime Stop could be contacted or it could be reported using my SAPS app. That's absolutely outrageous, given, and this is in 22nd of March. Here's information, and so it seems, and I'm sure the police will also deal with this, but it seems that it plays into this almost reluctance, and you were trying to get it going, and suddenly it's in the public media, and suddenly there's pressure, and suddenly things happen quickly, and I'm sure the minister jumps in, and woof, 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 things are done, he's arrested. But for this period of 6 or 9 months, a very dangerous serial rapist has been out, a murderer's been out, and people did not know about it. And that's why we are giving this serious attention, so that it never happens again. It's a unique situation, but we need to ensure that this inquiry gets to the very bottom of this. And I think JICS has played a huge role. I want to commend what you've done under very difficult circumstances with a limited budget and a limited staff. And you've made a number of concessions, which I appreciate. Yes, you could have come to us. Yes, hindsight is perfect, even for us as well. Appreciate officials are doing their best as well. Many officials, excellent. But those rotten ones, and we would like to find out, and you do allude to higher levels being involved, and that is the information that we would like to do. So thank you, Judge. I'll leave it at that if you, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much to Judge Cameron and JICS. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for being upfront with us. Thank you very much. We will now invite SAPS. I was under the impression that there was a reshuffling in the last 2 hours. Who is leading us from SAPS?
Commissioner, there is a national commissioner here who would determine who speaks.
National Commissioner? Yeah, maybe you can sit here next to G4S.
You might as well lock up 4 years.
Thank you very much.
No. When they are here, they are protected.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members, the Ministers, Minister of Police, Minister of Justice, and DM of Justice and Correctional Services, senior officials. Honorable Chairperson and members, our presentation will be led by Lieutenant General Mutsunyane, the Provincial Commissioner of Free State. We'll do our best with regard to giving the information, Honorable Chair and members. It's unfortunate that there is still a lot of work that is being done. There's a lot of work that has been done. There's still a lot of work that is being done. And some of the matters are still under investigation. And there are matters that were mentioned, which we might also want to put disclaimers forward, because they're gonna catch us with us up at court at some point. The first one that I will want to put a disclaimer on is the matter around the alleged doctor's visit to the G4S Correction Center. The date that has been given as the last date, would want to put a disclaimer on that. We might have a different date in the future, but we want to say we don't agree with that date for now. I will then hand over to the Provincial Commissioner to give a presentation. Honorable Chair, since this matter came on board, just a brief background, we appointed a team in Free State that worked closely with the advocate from the National Prosecuting Authority. So it was a prosecutor-guided investigation from the word go. And as we went along, we did engage the services, worked with my colleague, the National Commissioner of the Correctional Services. And I'm sure that the Provincial Commissioner will allude to the fact that you have seen in the G4S presentation that they said that we didn't give them certain information. As you are aware, this thing as it started as a pure inquest. And when we start realizing that it looks like there is murder here, we then, of course, work with officials of G4S, which they were not cooperative at all. But we didn't know that they are also suspects at that time. And as we proceeded, we encountered the problem as to we don't know how far in G4S can we go. Can we trust the ones that we're working with? We realize that we can't trust them, but how far do we trust as we go along? Hence, you would see that there is certain information that we couldn't give them, just as they were difficult with us in giving us some information where we had to resort to other processes. But let me leave it there and allow the Provincial Commissioner to give the brief. I will come back later. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Maybe since they're sitting together, trust will develop. Over to you, Commissioner, Provincial Commissioner.
Thanks, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, Minister of Police, Minister of Justice, colleagues, good afternoon. Honorable Chair, as you all know that investigation is a systematic search for the truth. That's what we did, and I want to say that this was never an easy investigation. It started just with inquest, but we'll see during the presentation that it ended up with so many charges added. And I have been listening that there's a concern to say that we took long to investigate. But I like to say that we investigate to arrest, not arrest to investigate. Because I'm afraid that sometimes when we rush to arrest, it's either the case is not going to be placed on the roll or it's going to be provisionally withdrawn. We wanted to make sure that the community, at the end of the day, we are going to give them justice they deserve. That's why we wanted to make sure that we are going to investigate and ensure that the docket is ready for prosecution. The presentation, Honorable Chair, will be talking to the purpose, background, investigation, preliminary autopsy report, preliminary DNA investigation, status on arrest, effected, and conclusion. Honorable Chair, the purpose of this presentation is to brief the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on matters relating to the investigation into Thabo's Bester escape from Maximum Correctional Center in Bloemfontein. It is alleged that on the 3rd of May 2022 at 3 a.m., a fire broke out at the cell number 35 of G4S. Although the incident allegedly occurred approximately around 3 a.m., the complaint was only reported by G4S to the SAPS at 6 a.m. on the 3rd of May 2022, and SAPS members were subsequently dispatched to the scene. The caller had indicated that there was an inmate who had committed suicide. On arrival of SAPS members at the scene, members of G4S pointed at the charred body that was in cell 35 as being that of Thabo Bester. An official from G4S informed SAPS that the alleged deceased Thabo Bester was initially accommodated in another block of cells. However, on Friday, the 28th of April, 2022, he had requested to be moved to another cell, citing that his life was under threat. The initial investigation resulted in the SAPS conducting an inquiry into the person who claimed to be the customary law wife of Thabo Bester. The investigation revealed that the alleged wife, who was known to be a doctor, came to claim the body of Thabo Bester. A member of SAPS noted that this is not the first body claimed by the same doctor in the Free State. This necessitated further investigation and an additional inquiry was registered. The investigation further necessitated that SAPS stop the burial, which was intended to be a cremation, and send the body for forensic tests. The preliminary autopsy report. The report suggested that the cause of death as being a natural death caused by a blunt force trauma to the head of the victim. The report revealed that the charred body that was of an adult male which has suffered a skull fracture. The autopsy also revealed that there was no smoke inhalation in the lungs. Therefore, indication was that the deceased was already dead during fire incident. Based on the autopsy report, the case was converted from an inquest to a murder. The SAPS also registered the following charges which regard to the incident: fraud, perjury, violation of the dead body, aiding and abetting escape of a convicted person, and defeating the ends of justice. On the 1st of July 2022, the first DNA analysis conducted on the body believed to be that of Thabo Bester, and the person known by the investigators as Thabo Bester's mother did not match. The DNA analysis on the mother of Thabo Bester was essential in establishing whether or not the body was that of Thabo Bester. The results further necessitates that the comparison of the DNA for Thabo Bester, taken during 2011 when he was previously arrested, with that of the child body that was found in the cell, be compared. Thabo Bester, the alleged female doctor, and the Mozambican national were arrested in the early hours of Saturday morning, the 8th of April 2023 in Tanzania. A delegation of senior officials traveled to Tanzania to oversee the repatriation of the suspects to South Africa. Former G4S official and alleged father were arrested on Saturday, the 8th of April 2023, and they are charged with murder, arson, defeating the ends of justice, and aiding escape from lawful custody. Both appeared before court on Tuesday, the 11th of April 2023, and the case was remanded until Monday, the 17th of April, and they are still in custody. On the 11th of April 2023, the employee of Integritron Integrated Solutions was arrested and appeared before court today, which is the 13th of April 2023, for aiding escape from lawful custody and defeating the ends of justice. In conclusion, the DNA of the child body was taken for further investigation to establish the identity. A test team has been established to investigate the matter further, and the investigation is ongoing and is currently at an advanced stage. That's our submission, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Any hands? Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last time I was advised that it would be 15 minutes. Do you want to So do you agree on 10 minutes? And that of course, 10 minutes, ne? Everybody 10 minutes.
Ish, Chair, thank you. Thanks for indulging us. Sibonge ngale sethulo my presentation ebekwe laphayana isikhulu samaphoyisa ngalolu daba. I would want to just ask a few questions. It has been brought to attention that the SAPS conducted the DNA test on the body purported to be that of Thabo Best, and the results came back negative. Now, what I wish to find out is how is it that when the DNA was conducted and Thabo Best's DNA was never found on the database, the DNA database of the police? Because in terms of the law, every offender that is sentenced for Schedule 8 cases, that includes rape and murder, they need to take their buccal test, test, yes, and have their DNA stored in police database. But that of Thabo Bester was never stored. We wish to find out how was that done. Number two, I want to check. Oh, yes, all right. Maybe
Yeah,
for
so
an
prefer to pose a question to only answer.
Okay,
ibe
Ngiyabonga,
more
Chair.
interactive.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson. All protocol observed. Good afternoon, colleagues. Chairperson, the DNA of...
Sorry, can you introduce yourself?
Okay, sorry for that. I'm Major General Motsepe from the Office of the Division Detective and Forensic Service in Pretoria at the National Office. The DNA of Thabo Bester is in the database of the South African Police DNA database. Let me go historically when it comes to the issue of the DNA. Thabo Bester was arrested during the year 2011 on a rape and murder. The sample was taken during a death period of the victim of rape.
Sorry, don't be too violent on the mic.
minimum force.
Okay. The sample was taken, which is a standard procedure. The sample was taken from the victim of that rape, and it was sent to forensic for DNA. During those years, when the suspect was denying the charges, the NPA will give us a letter so that the DNA can be run there. But we all must remember that the definition of rape is not all about DNA. So what transpired during that year, Thabo Bester confessed to the crime. And then he was solely linked with the case through the cyber investigation and through his confession. But the DNA was there. And then there was no request to make the linkage of his DNA, like the blood sample, to the sample which was the the sample which was taken from the victim, which is the sexual offenses kit, which when you take it, there are DNA samples there.
Thank you. My second question, Chair. When this body was discovered, this victim of murder, for now, let's say by Bester, was discovered, a sample was taken, again back to the mother of Bester. And we are told that it was matched and it didn't match. I understand that because this victim was deceased. So you had to do a familial sample. When we visited the forensic laboratories...
Apologies, Chair. Can the member just